episode 8 of my author journey, and in this episode I'm going to share with you all about my move to New York City. So if you've been following along, you know that I had moved to Australia right after I graduated and went down there and wrote a book, submitted it to a publisher, and at that time I'm also growing my faith with God, and he's leading me back to America and specifically to go to New York City. So I received an offer letter to go and become a middle school debate teacher in New York City. So that's kind of where this story is kicking off at. All right. In January 2019, at the age of 23, I moved to New York City with $200 to my name and $51,000 worth of debt. I start off with that detail because somebody needs to hear it. Somebody needs to hear that they can be led by God into a different area of life and not have the savings to do it. I'm not saying go out here and randomly move to a city and say, God, like finance this or pay for this or give provision. No, that's a sin of presumption. Don't do that. But if you have heard the voice of the Lord to tell you to go in a direction and you feel financially squeezed to do so, I'm a living and breathing person, not AI, telling you like God will sustain you, God will provide. I'm not saying it's gonna be a easy road. I'm not saying you're not gonna cry. I cried for days, for months, for years, okay, financially. But I still was in the grace and the providence and the perfect will of God in this decision making, okay? So when I went to New York, I crash landed in the Bronx at my Nana's house, and the school that I was working at was in Harlem. My Nana is a very interesting lady. She has her own set of different routines. I was waking up at 4 a.m. so that I could get my day started, sitting with the Lord, praying so that every day, like I feel like I am at least being an available vessel to minister to someone, whether it just be through word of encouragement, joy, whatever. At my job, like that was very important to me. I wanted to be available to that. So starting off my mornings with that. But because my Nana felt the need to wash dishes at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was up at 3 a.m. with her, and I was sleeping on an air mattress and in the living room, getting dressed out of my suitcase. Like we were doing that for the first 4 months. And when I was at my job, I started off as an associate debate teacher. So I was able to work with a co-teacher who was really training me and getting me up to speed because I had never taught before, like in a public school setting, never had that experience. And so she was giving me all the pointers of what to do to feel prepared as a teacher, but also to just embrace teaching middle school students, okay? Teaching middle school students, there's a song out there by like My Chemical Romance that says like teenagers scare like the living shit out of me. Excuse my French, I usually don't curse, but that is a specific feeling that I felt with the middle school children, okay? Especially in New York. They are just built different, okay? They're little adults and they're bigger than you. At least they're bigger than me. I'm tiny, I'm 5'2", barely clearing over 100 pounds, right? But they have to grow up very quick, and they sense when you don't have any bass in your voice, when you're really not about that. They sense fear, and they will point out your insecurities very easily. But I digress. So I had a lot of fun though. I enjoyed obviously like recess and lunch and relationship building with the students, but also the other things about learning how to properly lesson plan and a guided focus for the day and having those results at the end of it. So while this is all going on, I'm trying to find a church home. I started going to a church down in Brooklyn, so I was commuting from the Bronx to Brooklyn on Sundays to just go and be fed, make sure that I am in person going to a church environment so that I can manage. For me, I wanted to manage my faith, right? I was not trying to rest in the grace of God that I wouldn't fall back into old habits. But you know what the hidden blessing was of having so much debt and living in New York City? You're not really out there going to happy hour and spending all this extra funds because you don't have it, right? I am about my business on my payment plans for my credit cards and paying all that stuff down bit by bit, and also working about 12 hours a day. Sometimes I worked 72 hours a week, depending on the weekends, because you would take the kids to like debate competitions. Your girl was tired. Go out in the city that never sleeps. No, we're not doing that. I need to sleep. I need to rest. I need to be able to function, right? I'm going to war every day, okay? And not even spiritual warfare. I'm just going to war about my own identity as an adult amongst children, okay? So that's all happening, and I want to rest in God's grace, but I'm not fully feeling it just yet. I'm feeling like in a very much so like works operated mindset. But by the time that I get a job offer within the same company to switch to a different school down in Brooklyn, like I got a promotion to be like a lead teacher, so that was cool. I was able to then find a different church that happened to be in the downtown Brooklyn Mall area. And funny enough, the song that was playing was Good Grace. And I was taken aback by it because it's like, wait, there's a church here in the mall? Like, how did I not know this? And so that following Sunday, after hearing that song, I checked them out, ended up falling in love with the church, because it was one of those things where I really missed Australia a lot, and I needed some type of comfort from just that experience of grieving. And the lead pastors ended up being Australian. And I just was like, okay, God, like I hear you, like this is where you're allowing me to really like take root and find a church community in this place. So C3 NYC, they're called something now differently, I think Found or something like that. But that's the church community that I ended up being a part of. So moving out of the Bronx, moved to Brooklyn like over that summer, finally had like my own space. I had like an interior room, super small. It was like no bigger than a closet, but that's typical for the apartments in New York. But I loved living in Brooklyn. I was about 2 miles away from my new school, and I walked. I didn't have to deal with the subway or taking a bus. And at that time in the morning that I was going to work, because I had to be to work at like 6:30 in the morning, it was so quiet and it was so still, and to pass by all these different brownstones and just the stillness of New York City, it was beautiful. I got to spend a lot of time talking to God, again, continuing to pray, like equip me for the day. And at my new school, I was able to, grow with my kids, like as a fresh start. So when I first joined in January, it's like middle of the year, so it's harder to build relationships. But to start fresh in August with the students, like it was great. I loved my specific like debate kids. I loved all the kids, of course. We're supposed to say that, right? But I had a favorite student. Absolutely, hands down favorite student. Still my pumpkin to this day. I think they're like 16 now, which feels crazy. But I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed connecting with them. Sometimes you're co-parenting, which is very interesting to do now so my birthday's in February, so I turned 24. So it's interesting to co-parent at 24 when you're trying to still embrace being a young adult, but we were doing the thing. We were taking on the responsibility. In the time of me, is that a Boston accent? I don't know. Where did that come from? Anyways, in the time of me also teaching, I was also teaching on Sundays. I joined the kids ministry. So when I asked God, I was like, okay, Lord, I'm ready to serve, but what ministry do you want me to be in? And he immediately pointed out kids ministry, and I was like, why though? I'm already working with kids 5 days a week, sometimes 6 on Sundays too. But I was like, okay, we'll do it. We'll serve here.